What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Cross Country Bank Angler. It is a pretty cold day out here in my area. Probably one of the coldest that we're gonna have of the winter. I think the high today is like 35, which is definitely cold for my area. That's definitely unusually cold. But you know, it's winter. It happens. But you know, the fishing is slow right now. At least if you're on the bank. So today I'm going to be talking about a subject I haven't touched on a whole lot in other videos, which is fishing rods, and specifically BFS, bait finesse system rods. So, you know, the reels I think get maybe more attention a lot of the time from anglers and stuff. You know, that's kind of what people tend to focus on when they're kind of getting into it. You know, what reel should I get? What reel should I get? At least that for me, that's sort of something I'm guilty of. But you know, the rod is really just as important, and it's just as much a specialized piece of equipment as the reel. It's something that I've learned over the past year or so, trying out this this fishing equipment, this approach to fishing. I wanted to make this video not because I think I'm the authority on BFS rods, or that I know more than some of the other people that have made videos about this subject. In fact, I'm sure there's probably some better videos out there on this, but I did want to talk about rods and different directions you can kind of go with BFS rods and what to kind of expect, because there's some things that I have had to kind of learn the hard way with these rods. So to start off with, a BFS, in my view, you're going to want a light power or an ultralight power rod, but the way those rods can perform, can vary quite a bit. There's different actions, different materials, and it can get a little more confusing, I think, than just kind of going out and picking up a spinning rod, So with BFS, there's really two directions that people tend to go, and I think in the United States, most BFS anglers are bass fishermen. So you kind of have your typical sort of bass style rods that are just scaled down a little bit, a little more sensitive, lighter power, lighter action. And I think, of the rods that I have here that kind of fall into that category, it's probably going to be this one here. This is a telescopic rod. It's around 6 feet long, and it's kind of a weird rod. I'm actually going to leave it, I'm not sponsored by any tackle manufacturers, to get that out of the way, but I'm actually going to leave a link to this rod because, I don't know, it has zero branding on it whatsoever. It's a telescopic rod. You can get it down to about 2 feet long for travel. So this is something, a rod that I take, if I'm traveling somewhere, on a flight or whatever, and just kind of want to have a rod along just in case I have a little extra time to kill or something. But this rod is more like a bass rod to me because one, it's rated as an ultralight power on on the listing that you guys will see if you want to check this one out, but I really think it's more like a light power rod, and the action on it is I would say like a moderate fast, not extra fast, not super bendy at the top, but it's got a little more flex than a fast, so it's somewhere in between there. But you can see here it's got this full length handle behind it, right behind the reel seat, which is more like a typical bass rod. You can tuck that under your arm, and you're going to have nice leverage for your hook set and things of that nature. And I mean, it makes sense too. You need all this handle to hold the rod when it's collapsed. So this one is the most like a conventional bass rod of the ones that I use. And probably the most popular rod, at least in the States, that's kind of in this category is going to be one that I've never tried. It's a higher end rod. I'm a budget focused angler, so I try the less expensive things first, at least just to see if I can get them to work. Why spend more money than you have to? But it's going to be the Dobyns Sierra Ultra Finesse series of rods. I think these are all light power rods. I think they can depending on the model you get, they can range from about 6'5" to 7'4" in length. And this is the rod that most kind of BFS bass fishermen use. And this rod, yeah, it's going to handle a lot more just like a typical bass rod, but just like I said, with a slightly lower power and action. But if you're a bass fisherman, it's going to be pretty familiar to you, and it won't be, I don't think it's going to be that big of a transition to kind of use those types of rods. But then, you can also, there's kind of the panfish and the trout side of bait finesse as well, crappie fishing or trout fishing. I think the category expands a lot here because a lot of the rods, the BFS rods from overseas, are more of this style. And these are, I'm talking, much lighter, thinner blanks here. And generally shorter rods as well. So you can get, rods from like 4'6", or maybe even a little less, to around 6 foot. And I usually try to go for my fishing, I'm bank fishing, I'm wading, so I try to go for a rod of around 6 feet. Though you can definitely get some lighter ones in this category too. And another thing to consider, especially when you're getting into these sort of trout style rods, is the composition of the rod. So you can get, carbon rods, which are typically, your stiffer action, fast action rods, and then you can get, the composite and the fiberglass rods. And pure glass rods are actually quite popular for BFS for stream fishing, especially like in Japan, the trout fishing. That allows you to do some special kind of cool looking casting techniques, flick casting, that kind of thing, which gives you really exceptional accurate placement of your cast. So I've never used one of those glass rods. I may try one eventually. The two rods that I think kind of fall into this category that I've used are, once again, on the cheaper end. These are some Chinese market rods that I've gotten off AliExpress over the past year. So one is going to be this rod here, the Kingdom. Actually, let me turn that around so you can read it. Kingdom King Pro. This comes in several different, power ratings, and it's a twin tip. It comes with 2 tips, a light tip and an ultralight tip. This one, I did a video on this earlier in the summer. It's got this kind of cool looking wooden grip on it. Shorter grip on this one, so you don't really need, it's not a little awkward to try to tuck it under your arm like you would with a normal bass rod. So instead I kind of put it against my side a lot of the time like that. And I posted like a negative review of this rod, and I won't say my opinion has 100% changed, but I'm starting to gain some perspective on this rod, because what happened first time I fished with it, the tip of the rod broke, pretty easily, definitely more easily than any other rod that I'd used. Just kind of flicking off a small piece of plants like lily pads or something off of the end, and it snapped about a few inches down from the tip. And then I went out, I repaired the tip, and I went out another day, and the second tip broke with not much effort at all. And I was like, don't buy it, don't buy the rod, this thing is garbage. But I got another rod to sort of try something else. This one right here, this is the Lure Star Sigama, and I took this out in a video with this reel here. This is the iFish Band Tender Shoot. I have a video on this if you want to learn more about that. And the rod did well. I was really pleased with it. But then, I was kind of after the trip, I was, my rods were in the back of the car, and my tackle bag was back there, and I picking up the bag, and the line from the rod caught on like a strap or something, and this tip section once again got pulled by that, just for a little while, and that was enough to snap it. Just a little bit of force focused on that tip section, And I was also pissed about that. I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, I've had 2 of these Chinese rods, you know, the tips snap off on me like that. And it was disappointing because, you know, I really liked the way this rod handled. It's very sensitive, which is nice. And, you know, the action was good. It's a fast action rod. But, you know, 2 rods breaking easily like that doesn't feel like, you know, feels like less like a coincidence and more like there's something else afoot here. So I started doing a little bit of research on it, and it does seem like if you're going into these, you know, super light, you know, or ultralight BFS rods, these trout rods or panfish rods, the durability is not gonna match up with most other types of rods. Even like, you know, I'm thinking of my ultralight spinning rods that I've used. You know, I had one that was kind of like a fiberglass rod, and then I had the one I've been using more recently, the Daiwa Spinmatic D, and I've never had durability issues with those. The tips I've never had a tip on an ultralight spinning rod break or any guide issues, anything like that. No durability problems. But for some reason, with these casting rods, these light casting rods, the durability is not the same. Now, I can't speak for something like the Dobbin Sierra. I don't know about the durability of those. Maybe those are better. But, you know, I've just been kind of looking around on Reddit and seeing what other, you know, if other people are kind of having similar issues. And based on partially some comments that I've had people leave on the video of this rod and some other things that I've seen, it seems like if you're gonna buy these foreign-made BFS rods, they're just gonna be more lightly built than an ultralight spinning rod. You know, some people just have said things like, you know, it's just harder to make a light casting rod with good, you know, versus a light spinning rod. It's a more complex process to kind of get the action right and all of that. You know, the construction is a bit more, just more complex than an ultralight spinning rod. But it's something that you should keep in mind, and I don't think it necessarily has to do with the fact that these are cheap rods. I've gotten the idea that, you know, more expensive BFS rods also have a very fine light tips. And the tip section is probably the most important part on these rods because, you know, this one here, I have had to replace this rod one time, but it was due to user error, operator error. I kind of was carelessly transporting this rod, and it got damaged. And it was, this comes with a little cover that you can put over the end of it, you know, once it's collapsed, to protect it. And I didn't use that, and yeah, it broke. But this rod has a solid tip on it, and I've never had any issues with the tip itself getting damaged or breaking. But these 2 rods, this is the Kingdom King Pro once again, and then the Lure Star Sagama. These have hollow tips, and I think the tips are actually slightly thinner as well in comparison to this. So what does that mean? Well, one, you know, that kind of helps explain the durability issues with these rod tips. I would say all 3 of these rods have really good sensitivity, with the hollow tipped rods probably being slightly better in the sensitivity area than the other one, and the solid tip. So what does this mean? You know, you have this good sensitivity, but poor durability. What does that mean for your fishing? Well, one, it means you probably need to start, you know, getting familiar with how to repair a rod tip. I actually got a little rod tip repair kit recently, assuming that, you know, eventually I'm going to have some more issues. You know, this is a replacement for the first one that broke, and I'm just kind of assuming that down the road at some point that tip's probably going to break again. And like I said, I repaired this one But the repair was starting to affect the performance. It wasn't a great repair. I'm not an expert on that. So what I did instead was just I cut off the end of the rod down to this guide here, which, you know, I think some people are going to be not find that acceptable, right, to have a broken off rod tip and be fishing with the rod like that. But to be honest, this King Pro, since I've done that, it's actually fished just fine, in my opinion. You know, the action is different from what it was before. It's obviously shorter, so the action is faster on this rod. I don't mind that at all. It's yeah, I actually like the faster action. I was actually having trouble getting a good hook set with like a buzz bait with this rod before. This was like more of a moderate action. But in the sensitivity, you know, obviously you're going to lose some sensitivity without the full tip, but the sensitivity is still perfectly fishable, perfectly workable on this thing. So that's another option. You know, just be ready to kind of you know, make repairs or make some compromises if you have a rod tip break. You know, that's sort of what people have said on the videos too, is, you know, every now and then this is just something that happens, and I've repaired the tip and the rod still works. So that's kind of the main tip I want to leave you with is these rods, be careful with them. You know, try to make them last as long as you can, obviously, but you may need to be prepared to, yeah, the durability may not be the same, and you may need to do some tinkering, some repairs, some alterations to the rods. So anyway, that's all I really had today. I would also be curious to hear, you know, if you are, you know, into BFS, you've been doing some BFS fishing yourself, what your experiences have been with rods. Do you find that the tips of these rods break more easily? Are you going through rods more quickly, or are you having to do a lot of repairs, or maybe this isn't even an issue for you, and maybe I'm just not careful with my equipment and I'm just getting stuff bashed up? I'd be curious to see if there are others out there having a similar experience to me. So yeah, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, a bit more on the informative side versus kind of the entertainment side in this one. But you know, I thought it was sort of an important information to share, because it was just a different experience to any other type of rod that I've had. You know, figuring out, you know, how to fish with them, you know, being more careful on the water with them, and yeah, I feel like I said, I learned some things the hard way. So anyway, with that being said, if you enjoyed, you know, if you want BFS content, you enjoyed this video and you want more, then you should definitely subscribe to the channel. We've got weekly fishing videos on Cross Country Bank Angler. You know, we do lure fishing, BFS, ultralight, bass fishing, you know, wading. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Peace.